okay? Because you can't deny Genshin Impact is a game for kids. It is. It is.
It is a baby game.
It is.
It is a baby game.
But in its simplest form, Genshin kind of feels, to me, compared to every other game I've played, Genshin feels like a kid's game.
And there's nothing wrong with the game being for kids, but we at least have to acknowledge that it is a baby game. It is truly a baby game. It is, guys. It is a game for babies.
So you may have heard some people say that Genshin Impact is a kid's game. Mainly Tectone talks about this, but if you did hear him say this, your first thought was probably, no, it's not. And that's what was going through my head too. Genshin's not a children's game. But when he started to explain himself more and I really thought about it, I started to second guess myself. I don't think there are many things that scream that this game is for children, but there are definitely some there. He had some really good points to back up why he thinks it's a kid's game. When things we like are accused of being for children, I think we have a knee-jerk reaction, maybe even get a little defensive and say it's not. It's like calling a grown man childish for collecting toy car models. For example, a lot of people, including myself, get upset when someone says anime are cartoons. We get upset because cartoons are associated with being for children. So it feels like they're indirectly calling us childish for taking an interest in anime. So in a lot of cases, we end up snapping back, saying it's not for kids and trying to bring up various points to back up our claim. But if we stop and take a moment to look up what a cartoon actually is, I would argue that anime falls under that category. According to Wikipedia, a cartoon is a type of visual art that is typically drawn, frequently animated in an unrealistic or semi-realistic style. I would also argue that most anime are targeted towards teens. A lot of anime take place in high school and even more main characters are teenagers. Ichidori, Ichigo, Naruto, hell even Jotaro's buff ass is a teenager. And a lot of people consider teens to be kids. So if someone said that anime is for kids, they technically wouldn't be wrong. But it's kind of weird though, because I would consider an anime like JJK to be for teens, and it would just sound wrong to say it's for kids. When I hear kid, I think of like a 10 or 8-year-old, and I usually don't associate teens with kids. Teens are in the transitional period from kids to adults, and they pretty much share the same interests as adults too. When it comes to anime and video games, teens might as well be considered as adults. I watched Devilman Crybaby when I was like 15, 16, and I loved it. And this was probably the most mature an anime could get. There's not much that teens can't handle when it comes to media. I'll come back to this later, I kind of got off track. But I wanted to talk about why Tectone and other people think Genshin is a kid's game. I'll just list off a few points that I've heard and some that come to mind. The story is tame. The game is too easy, the world is too colorful and saturated, the combat and units are simple, too many minigames, not enough endgame content or activities to properly push the limits of your units, pointless updates and changes that cater towards the casual player, and Paimon. Let's talk about the story in Paimon first. When someone says that Genshin's story is for kids, that just implies to me that they think it's bad. Because why would they be complaining if it was good? More mature stories do tend to be better because there's a lot more things and topics that they can cover, but I don't think a story has to be dark or have more mature themes in order to be good though. For example, my favorite cartoon is Steven Universe. Out of all of the cartoons I watched, Steven Universe has the best story. Maybe besides Gravity Falls, I'd have to rewatch them, it's been some years. Other cartoons like Regular Show and Adventure Time had some good story beats, but they were more focused on entertainment. And for half of the first season, Steven Universe was too. But then they pivoted and became more story focused. And by the second season, I felt like I was watching an anime. I think Steven Universe is a good example of how to make a good story without any like super dark themes. My favorite thing about Steven Universe was probably the character development. This scene with Pearl brought one of my friends to tears. The character development in the show is peak. And guess what Genshin's best Archon quest had a lot of?
According to the judgment of the Oratrice Mécanique de l'Alice Cardinal, the Hydro Archon to be punished via the death sentence.
Character development. I think we can all agree that Fontaine has the best story in the game. Not only does it have a lot more character development, but it's a lot darker too. You see a guy get crushed to death, people are dissolving into water as they scream in pain. There's a serial killer who has a history of kidnapping and killing women. We hear about how Lynette was sex trafficked. This actually blew my mind because I thought Genshin would never cover a topic like this in like a main quest line. It's like, hello, are we even playing the same game? Like, what's the darkest thing that happened in Inazuma? Oh, an NPC died off screen. Oh, no. But my boy Tepe though.
For Tepe! For Tepe!
The rest of the main quest might as well be for babies compared to this. There are some darker themes like slavery in the lore, but none of that is in the forefront of the game. If it's not in an Archon quest, then I'm most likely not paying attention to it. Anyway, after Fontaine, I don't think you could use the story as a good point to support why you think the game is for kids. Sure, most of the overall plot in the game may be mid, but I think it's only going to get better going forward. As for Paimon, I've heard that her presence makes it feel like that she's there for kids or dumb people, and some people feel like Genshin is insulting their audience's intelligence by having her repeat what's already been said. This is an issue that Tectone talks about a lot, but I've never really gotten this vibe from Paimon. Sure, if you erase Paimon, the story really wouldn't change at all, but I never felt like she was there to make the story more digestible. I would still prefer it if she was gone though. All she does is yap. I do think using Paimon to explain why you think the game is for kids would be a valid point though. She's a cute little fairy that always follows you around and talks in a high-pitched voice. Moving on to the world, when being compared to Wuthering Waves at launch, Genshin's world was called childish because it was too colorful and saturated. Yeah, colorful things would appeal to kids more, but that doesn't mean it's for kids. Just because kids are more likely to like something doesn't mean that it's for kids specifically. I think Kai Cenat would be a good example. I think Genshin's world has a neutral aesthetic. As for gameplay, it's probably one of the biggest complaints. A lot of people say the game is too easy, implying that it's this way to cater towards children who aren't good at playing video games yet. This applies to all of the game's content, but most people tend to focus on Spiral Abyss because it was the only game's in-game content. I've heard a lot of people shit on Spiral Abyss and say it's too easy. Meanwhile, I've been playing since 1.6 and still struggle with it to this day, specifically floor 12. I've always struggled to get 9 stars on this shit, and it's not like it's like actually difficult. As long as you have a shield or a healer, all you have to do is spam your abilities. But these fat asses are so fucking tanky, I can't dish out enough damage in time.
Genshin Impact's combat as being like, oh, look at how big the health bar is now. Can you beat it? Go ahead, Sonny. Run around with your kite. Get him with your stick.
Most of my characters are as high as they can go with like best in slot weapons, so it just leaves me wondering what the fuck am I doing wrong. I just don't think it's as easy as everyone makes it out to be. When it comes to the other points, like the combat being too simple, no endgame, and too many minigames, I don't think the game is like this to cater towards children. I think it's just trying to cater towards casuals. And making a game for casuals indirectly makes it more kid-friendly. Also, what comes to mind when you hear kids game? You may think of Minecraft or Fortnite, but what makes those kids games? Minecraft is associated with kids, but nothing about the game implies that it's for kids or even adults. Ignoring the shop and mods, Minecraft is a completely neutral game. Both adults and kids play Minecraft, but the majority of the player base are kids. Hence why the game is associated with kids. Same thing goes for Fortnite too. Tectone still plays it and he gets his ass ate out.
Hold up.
That guy right there is so hard.
What are you aiming at?
In my opinion, to be a kids game, the game has to be just for kids. For example, you're not gonna see many adults playing Sackboy's Big Adventure. One time my teacher let me watch Mob Psycho 100 on the class display, and there was one guy talking shit. He was like, who watches this? Why are we watching cartoons? Isn't this for kids? And I said it was for all ages. And then he mumbled, so was SpongeBob. I didn't exactly hear what he said, so I didn't say anything, but my friend told me after class. You can say SpongeBob is for all ages, obviously anyone can watch it, but it's specifically targeted towards kids, while Mob Psycho is targeted towards teens and young adults. Sure, a kid could watch Mob Psycho, but their comprehension skills aren't that good. I watched Attack on Titan for the first time when I was like 10. I loved it, but when I rewatched it years later, I realized that I had no idea what the fuck was going on the first time around, because I was so young. I was like my one friend who thought Neuvillette flooded Fontaine. So yeah, I'd say a game like Sackboy's Big Adventure would be for kids, while Genshin on the other hand would be for teens and young adults. But I'm not gonna lie, this Simulacra event really has me second guessing myself. I want to talk about it, but I'll save that for another video. So yeah, I don't think Genshin is a kids game, but it is extremely kid friendly. And I think most of that is due to the game mainly being for casuals. But I can easily see where Tectone is coming from when he says this. But I think that covers all the points I want to talk about. If you've enjoyed the video so far, then you'll probably like my future videos, which means you might as well subscribe.
From now on, if I'm going to blow my load, it's going to be inside your mother's mouth or in her ass.